Did you know that one of the largest ever randomized control trials that ever conducted on cholesterol showed that every 30 points you dropped your cholesterol, the chances of you dying actually rose by 22%. And in fact, in their control group, where they lowered their cholesterol, that group was more likely to have heart attacks and strokes. Why have you not heard about this study? Well, it was buried at the NIH for decades. Literally conducted these trials from 1968 to 1973, and then the results went unpublished, buried at the NIH until it was uncovered by Christopher Ramsden. And there's a lot of things with this study that are actually very good. For one, they conducted these trials at health institutions where they were able to 100% control what people were eating. Nearly 10,000 people were a part of this randomized control trial. And the results were basically counter to what we were believing about cholesterol at the time. Why did one of the largest ever randomized control trials go unpublished? We know at the same period of time you had large sugar manufacturing companies that were paying scientists to say that sugar's not bad for your heart, it must be animal fats. They had to later retract all of those journal articles because all those scientists were paid off. We know at the same time there was a big push in the food industry to get people off of saturated fats because there's no profit there into the vegetable fats. So we know they were producing studies that say, oh, this must be better for your heart. When you have one of the largest randomized control trials at the time showing that that information is not true, and then it gets buried, and at the same time, we know you have these industries spending a lot of money to push a narrative out into the field so they can produce more product and sell more things to people, should we at least be a little bit curious of that? Now, I'm not here to say that this trial was perfect, but it's interesting. Why do we see randomized control trials not being published? In fact, today it's estimated that 20 to 30% of all trials, randomized control trials, are not published. That's a real problem because it means there's a lot of data out there that we don't know what it says. Somebody goes out, they produce a trial, they don't like the results, and they simply don't publish it. Who's deciding, well, I don't like the results, so I'm not publishing it? I think these are questions we should all ask. Again, I am not here to say that this one trial from the 1960s and 70s is the definitive proof of anything, but it's certainly interesting data, and it's probably one of the more rigorous studies we've done on cholesterol that's not tied to a big food or big pharmaceutical company. Furthermore, when we do look at a lot of the available data today, because there are a lot of studies today that do show the opposite, that show, nope, if you lower cholesterol, all-cause mortality goes down, things like that. But in many of these studies that I've read, when you go to the conflict of interest section, almost every single researcher or doctor tied to that project listed things like AstraZeneca, Pfizer, Moderna, other companies as their conflict of interest. They are associated with these major companies that are profiting off of the information coming out of the study. With what we know about cholesterol today, the mainstream narrative on cholesterol, is it correct? Or do we think the actual truth has been buried in some of these studies? I'd love to hear your thoughts.